Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Tales from a Professional Nerd, episode 24. I'm Bryan CP Steele, and I'll be your nerd today, and I suppose every day that you watch one of these episodes. Let's see. First off, if you hear any weird background noise, looks like just outside my studio, my neighbor is deciding to mow the lawn at 8 o'clock at night. That's when I'm recording, by the way, tonight. It's a later night. Yay! So hopefully that my windows and everything will keep most of that noise out. But I apologize if there's a kind of a weird background hum or anything of the sort. Um, so let's see. The week in Bryan. Before we get in the week in Bryan, so this is officially the first of the weeks of, hey, check out the brand spanking new topic associated AC10 Armor Class 10 apparel t-shirt. Today we have, oh, gotta go backwards. We have this fabulous shirt that says, it's got a picture of somebody pointing at the rule book. Down at the bottom it says, "Don't be that guy." And it says, I'm sure you can read, it says, "I cast Summon Rules Lawyer, save versus fund at -5 until I get my way." We will get more into that in a moment as why this fabulous AC10 shirt is so relevant for today's topic. But before we get into that, the week in Bryan. All right, let's see. Things have been good. Things have been solid. I started work in earnest with Big Child Creatives. Not only reaching out to retail stores and distribution channels to see if they'll start carrying our merchandise, but I've also started laying the groundwork for hopefully what will be one of our first Big Child Creatives games. I can't get into it right now because I still have to have the boss man sign off on it and get things moving. But I'm excited for baby steps at first. It's not going to be anything huge or this massive in-depth world or anything like that. But it's going to hopefully take one of Big Child's existing intellectual properties and some of that amazing art that the team can create. And put it to good use in a fun and fast little game that will hopefully get people ramped up to see that, oh, hey, Big Child's not just making hobby stuff anymore. We're going to start branching out into this other cool aspects. That being said, if you are a retailer or if you're connected to a distributor or if you know of a retail shop that might want to carry some very just beautiful and striking hobby miniature like art busts or some good proxies for some Blood Bowl guys, or some just beautiful works of art, really in the miniature hobby world. Do me a favor, either throw the link or the website or the Addy, whatever, into the comment section on here, or hit me up on Facebook or something and let me know. And I'll reach out to them and see if we can't get them to start carrying some of this merchandise and get a cool working relationship together for when we do start putting out games. Let's see what else. Been doing a lot of reading, a lot of research reading for my other retainer gig over at Crafty Games. Getting well versed in some background stuff as to what we are going to be launching next year. I think next year. I don't know. Has yet to be determined. How's that? Let's see, what else? I have been doing a lot of commission painting, talking to a couple people about taking on some other commissions. It's been a busy week for Bryan. I finished a brand new proxy Earth Elemental sculpt. So here are two of them. Basically, they come in three pieces. La 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 la. They come in 3 pieces. They come, but each arm is separate, and then the body slash legs is one piece. But I made the shoulder fittings kind of universal, so you can kind of flip them around and put them in different poses depending on how you want to do them. I'll make sure that eBay link is on the description too, because they're big dudes. For I think I'm selling them for like $10, $12 on eBay. Uh, Obviously unpainted. These are my painted ones. Getting my army ready for Dragonfall. Speaking of Dragonfall, segue. It's getting down to the wire. It's down to we're in like the last 3 or 4 weeks. If you are anywhere near the Midwest and you want to have a couple of days of just awesome role playing and miniatures, and I think there's some board gaming going on, a couple of seminars, um, and come see me or maybe play in some of my games. I'm running a couple of games. I know there's still some tickets available. I'm going to be playing in some games. It's gonna be a blast, and it's affordable. It is not an expensive convention. I'll put the link for Dragonfall in the description so you can take a look at it. But I mean, seriously, even if you just come up for like one day, if you come up for like Saturday or something, it's going to be a lot of fun. And for all of you Dark Age players out there, I know there's a bunch that follow this because of my past relationship with that game. Um, you should definitely show up, because I am not only am I going to play in the Dark Age tournament there, but I'm going to be using a whole bunch of models you've never seen before, because or you have seen because of following me on Facebook or whatever. But I'm planning on bringing 750 points of painted Earthcast. Uh, if I've got time to get that stuff painted before Dragonfall, but I think I should. I think I'll be able to get it taken care of. It's gonna be a lot of fun. But it's gonna be a great show. And everyone that I've talked to that has gone to Dragonfall in the past, or I believe its sister show put on by the same people as Polar Vortex in Chicago. Uh, they Everybody speaks really highly of how this is run and how it's put together. So you should come by and check it out. Even if you just come out for like one day to play a couple of games or whatnot, it'd be awesome. It'd be fantastic to have you at my table, or to maybe chit chat a little bit about the channel or whatnot. Maybe if I can figure out how to do this whole live thing by then, maybe I can get some live Q&A for the channel. I don't know. Well, we'll see how it goes. One of the other things that has happened this week that has dominated a lot of my time is I finished up technically last week. I finished up the Halloween special Dungeon in a Box adventure that you get if you sign up, like subscribe, like right now, or if you're an existing subscriber to the Dungeon in a Box. And that's gonna be I can't wait. I'm gonna run that one when the box is all put together and packaged, whatever. I'm gonna run that one at my local store. I'm gonna make sure that I put some people through that. I think that's gonna be a lot of fun. That's gonna be a fun box to play. But speaking of both Dungeon in a Box and Dragonfall, while I'm on those topics, I am running a sponsored event at Dragonfall that is a Dungeon in a Box adventure. Basically, I've got a group of pre-made first level characters for people to sit down and play in how one of these Dungeon in a Box adventures work. And I've got prize support for it, as far as like, someone at the table is going to walk away with something cool. I'm bringing a little extra love for the charity raffle at Dragonfall from Dungeon in a Box. Basically, Dungeon in a Box, these guys, I'm so glad. I am so glad that I managed to hook up with them earlier this year. The work that I've done with them, the adventures that I've written, I'm super excited to see those, out in the world and get people's experiences when they get to that part in the series. But not only that, it's a fun company to work with. Uh, the owner David Crennan and I, we will chat either electronically or on the phone or whatnot, and we will start bouncing ideas off each other of what we want to do, and it makes me smile so often when like he is just about or I'm just about ready to tell him something about, oh my god, we should do this, and like the message that comes in is exactly or just like a hair off from what I was about ready to pitch to him. So definitely a like minds situation over there, and I just signed on to do another full box for them. So that's what I've been working on for the last day or so in my spare time. Um, and it's the part that I'm doing a lot of my writing on because so Dungeon in a Box. I know I've discussed this before, but it starts at box one, basically season one, episode or chapter one, box one, whatever, and goes through like the first, so I want to say 10 or 12 chapters, and then it goes into like season two, which is 2.1, 2.2, so forth and so on. By the time I signed on to start writing for Dungeon in a Box, um, they they were already up to like 2.3 or 2.4. So a lot of that early stuff is already been set in stone, and somebody else wrote that was already taken care of. So I'm getting to do a lot of this later stuff. And because the Dungeon in a Box adventure campaign is written to be, you could use it as individual chunks of story in someplace else, so long as like the levels and stuff matched up. But it's designed to be an arc, get your characters started in chapter one, and at the end of chapter 2.15 or 2.12, they've reached the culmination of the story. Everything's great, but also the experience levels are progressing that way as well. So now that I've been working on some of these late season twos, um, I'm writing adventures for 17 to 18th level characters. And to say that it has been a long time for me to have played to have played that kind of adventure or played that kind of hero in that time, that's saying a lot. I want to say the highest level character that I played or have ran for in the last 10 years was maybe 12, 11, maybe. So writing these adventures for these higher level guys, it's kind of a thrill because I get to use monsters that in D&D 5th ed I wouldn't dare put like a legitimate demon lord, like one of these Yugoloths or anything. I wouldn't dare put that against some of my regular groups, just because these guys will just chew them up. Or some of the dragons with like their legendary lair actions, and they're acting 3 or 4 times around because of their legendary actions, and then their lair action, and then the regional feat or whatever. There's a lot going on with some of these higher level critters that I've never had to mess with before or take into consideration. Because again, when you're writing an adventure, you don't want it to be too hard. You don't want it to be a walkthrough. You don't want it to be like, oh, it's a breeze. My guy's just blop, 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 whatever. But you also don't want it to be, oh my God, we lost our entire party 3 times. I hate this book. So you got to try and find that happy middle ground. And with a couple of resources that have been shown to me, and then a little bit of my own intuition, I think I figured out a good sweet spot. But again, getting to write these higher adventures and realizing that I can kind of pull out like there's been a time where I've sent my initial draft into David, and he'll look at it and go, he's like, the adventuring party's gonna walk through this, man. It's too easy. Because I looked at it and went, man, this is a tough encounter. There's a lot of scary stuff here. And he's looking at it as going, 6 15th level characters will walk through this giggling like school children. And he's right, because I'm just not used to that. So I got to get myself back into the swing of things. So we go through and we readjust the encounters and fix things and make it better to what it's supposed to be. I've always been more of a storyteller than a dungeon master. Case in point, I actually got to run some Vampire last week, some 5th edition Vampire from Modifius. Very happy to have run that game. It's been a long, long time since I've run for my Vampire guys. And you can tell the first hour I was pretty rusty. it's pretty off kilter. Trying to remember rules and what is this plus this? How many successes do I need? God, what's a rouse roll? It took me a minute to get back into the swing of things, but now that I am, I'm gonna try and do my best to schedule that game a little more regularly. Also, as a side note, it was the first time that we had all of the players there. It's the third event in that chronicle, or third session in that chronicle, and the first 2 sessions, due to scheduling and in one instance family tragedy, one of my players, one of my best friends, couldn't make it to the game, and very last minute, so we would run without him. And I had kind of this this is a good lead in to the topic for today. I had kind of made a mental note as the storyteller for this chronicle that if he wasn't going to make it to this game, I was going to probably write him out, and find either a new person to take over the spot or just play with one less person in the game and figure it out. But I'm glad that he made it. I'm glad that he seemed to have a really good time. Story time. So the story time for this, the friend in question is my friend Steve, who I have known. Of all of my friends, I want to say Steve is probably number 3 or 4 in the just the sheer amount of time that I've known him. 20 plus years, easily, going on 30. I've known him for a million years. He officiated my wedding, my wedding to Natalie. He has been there for me in some of the hardest times of my life. And I hope that I've been able to help him out in the same way. But we've always had role playing as something that we've done. And the last year or so, it's been kind of light as far as like schedules. We just haven't been able to get at the table very much. But he and I met each other effectively through a vampire game, through a live action vampire game. Way back when I was like 16 or 17, and became friends and then enemies and then friends, and you know how it goes. But we've known each other for so long. We've been through every type of vampire game there can be. Vampire, werewolf, changeling, you name it. When it came to the World of Darkness, other than mage, because I do not care for mage, we've been part of it together. And so when Vampire 5th Ed started kind of poking out, being like, hey, this is coming back out again, and it's looking really cool. New rule set, new mentality behind the game. Could be awesome. We stayed up one night after playing D&D, like an extra. The game's over. Everyone needs to go home. Who has to work tomorrow? And then we stayed up like another 2 hours talking about, just like reminiscing old vampire characters and talking about cool moments that had happened and neat arcs and stuff that we wanted. And it was partially Steve that talked me into running or at least got me excited enough to sort of poke the bear and got me to run this Vampire 5th Edition Chronicle for them. And so that's what made it so heartbreaking that he missed the first two. I call game sessions episodes when it comes to Vampire. So he missed the first 2 episodes. And I'm so glad that he made it to the third. So glad that he made it to the third, and hopefully subsequent as we go forward. But I had kind of made the decision that if he wasn't going to make it to this third game, because there had been so much scheduling that I had done to try and make sure that he could make it to these games, that it was one of the reasons why we kept postponing the game. We kept pushing it back and pushing it back and pushing it back because Steve couldn't make it. And this is kind of where I'm leading. I'm going to lead myself into what today's topic. So if you saw the topic for today is be a good player at your table. And now I'm saying that specifically because I also don't want this episode. And here is my disclaimer, my caveat, my quid pro quo, if you will. What I'm going to talk about today about being a good gamer is generally what I have seen over my 30 some odd years as a gamer, 20 some odd years professionally, that again and again and again has instituted the best sessions that I've seen. Has the stories that I hear from people coming back from convention or from convention games and that have this to tell, or the horror stories that have come out of some of the instances that people have talked about. So coming on the heels, last week we did an episode dedicated to the whole consent in gaming idea. The idea that your game master and your player kind of have this sort of back and forth, and your fellow players have this this kind of agreement, up until recently apparently unwritten agreement, and then now this consent form is a thing that can happen. But what we were talking about is trying to make for the best experience at the game table. And I focused a lot on what we can do as someone running a game. Setting the stage, setting the story, setting the NPCs, setting the events, in conjunction with what the players want or don't want. And it occurred to me that one of the other things that can happen is you can have a player at the table that is causing the issue. And now I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on the whole consent thing. You could have a player that's like, I'm gonna torture people, or my character's a half-orc rapist, whatever. That's a different animal to deal with. That's, that is quite obviously a problem if that does not fit with the way the table wants to be played. But what I'm talking about today is more along the lines of kind of general etiquette as a player. And that's not meaning close your mouth when you eat, or don't put your feet up on somebody else's furniture. Those go without saying, especially if you're around me. Close your mouth when you eat. Sorry, that's one of my pet peeves. Oh my gosh, it's the fastest way to make me want to leave a table is sit there and oh geez. All right. All right. I'm giving out myself all side quest. So I think some of the basics are, if this is and I think there might be a slight adjustment based on whether or not it is a recurring table, like it is your local game group that gets together, or it's a game group that, every Wednesday night at the local shop we play D&D, and it might not be the same 6 people, but it quite often is the same pool of 15 people that play every Wednesday night, or whatever. Whatever the case may be, I think some of the general etiquettes are, if you are sick, like if you have a cold, or if you have a fever, obviously if you've got, some kind of nasty mono or something, don't come to game. Call your game master, call the game store, whatever. Be like, hey, I've got the gross, and I don't want to give it to everybody else. But if you've just got like a cold, like if you just have the sniffles or a sore throat, grab what you need, grab your hand sanitizer, grab your extra dosages of vitamin C. Uh, if you think you can muscle through and you're not contagious, do everybody a favor and try and do your part. We want you to be at the table. We just don't want to get sick because of it. Now, that being said, if you are sick and you're like, I want to make it to the game because I don't want to miss my experience points or the story to go on without me because it's so cool. It's flattering, but nobody wants to get sick because you refuse to stay home. Maybe in today's world, maybe offer to see if you can play that one session via Skype. Have someone bring a laptop or a tablet, and just be like, if they have any kind of worry about honesty when it comes to dice rolls and stuff, have someone at the store make the dice rolls for you. Or whatever you need to do. But think of your fellow players, and this is where my situation with Steven came in. Is a lot of the fact that he had missed so much of the opening sessions of the game meant to me that he was going to have a hard time keeping up, and he was going to have a hard time hitting the ground running if he kept missing sessions. And especially if it was, these first handful of pretty important kind of character building, relationship building sessions. It's always hard to be a new player sitting at a table full of people that have already been playing, because unless your storyteller or game master has really figured out a great way to kind of insert you, or here you are, nobody knows who you are, start socializing. Unless they figured out how to make that part of the game, it can be daunting to just have a new face suddenly appear, especially in games like some of the older hack and slash D&D games where you're like stuck down in a dungeon, or the Tomb of Horrors if you're down there for weeks, or what is it, the Mad Mages dungeon thing where it goes down like a bazillion levels. If you're gone for that long, and a new player wants to bring a character in, Game Master might need to do some wand waving, some portal opening kind of thing, or look at the players and go, hey, I understand this is going to be a little railroady and a little ham-fisted to get him in, but I got to get him in. I want them to play. They need to be able to get into this game. So, part of being a player now again, this is definitely my opinion. I know there are games out there that are very open door, that are like, I don't care, you come and go as you please. If you're not here, we hand your character to the Orb of Confusion, and they stand in the corner going dar, rar, 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 the whole time, and we'll just not get you killed. I get that. I understand that's a thing that is difficult for me as a player and as a game master, because I write a lot of my plots and a lot of my kind of general outlines very narrative, very story driven, and having characters just not be there one session to be there the next, and then to fall back out again, or they were in the middle of this really cool scene and we had to finish playing because of time or whatever, and now the guy is a mute even though he had a lot to say in the session before. Whatever the case may be, it's I would always prefer, if it's up to me, barring a game that is designed for revolving door characters, um, I would prefer to have all 5 or 6 players, or 7 in some instances, every time, all the time, and a tent every time, all the time. And I say that because there are also instances. I remember running D&D for groups that when the players have done something and they've split the party. I know you've heard that a million times. Don't split the party. That what ends up happening is half the group gets the limelight for an X amount of time, and depending on where that is in the story or what kind of scene it is, or is it a combat, or are the players dragging it out even longer than what I had anticipated, it can create kind of a doldrum for the other player or players. And there was a gamer that was notorious in our group, that in our local circle, that if the limelight was not on said player, they would just go find someplace and fall asleep. And I always, under certain circumstances aside, oh hey, they slept 2 hours the night before, or they drove for 18 hours that day, or whatever. I get it, but barring those special circumstances, all I ever thought of in those instances was how incredibly rude that was to the person running the game. Um, is that it basically was like, hey, since I'm not involved in this scene, I don't care what's happening. I don't care what my other players are going to be doing or what the story is going to be. It would be like if you have a TV show that you love. You love this TV show to death. It's your favorite TV show. And it's the fabulous adventures of Mac and Terry. I get making stuff up. And Terry's your favorite character. Terry's the best. You love everything that has to do with Terry. You are crying when he's making jokes. You're crying with laughter, and you're on the edge of your seat during tense places. Terry is the best. But as soon as Terry's not on the screen, you change the channel. That's exactly what it feels like. Is you just don't care about what else is happening in the game unless you're directly involved. And I know personally, I take that as a slight as a game master. Is I'm trying to put together a very cool narrative story and a very neat plot, and you should want to watch the parts of the play that you're not in, if that makes any sense. So that's, again, these are just etiquette things. That I think that you should always be aware of. Very recently, I was talking to a gamer who I've known for a couple of years now through my connections at CMON and Dark Age. That it sounds like I'm going to get to maybe play with them or run a game for him and some other people, maybe a Dragonfall. And the topic came up of when I build these pre-made characters for this adventure, or for this game session, will I have a good mix of male and female characters? That I try to do my best. I don't do an even split because I am also generally aware of the demographic at most of these shows. Now, that's not to say that it matters in most instances. And the reason why I bring this up is because the player involved said that if there was a character that they wanted, but it was not a female, that they would just make it a female. While I don't have a problem with that, like, especially in most instances, I can't think of a situation where the gender of a character honestly matters to the narrative of the character. It might take a little tweaking, if your character is supposed to be the husband that's off running away, well, now you're the wife off running away. You have a husband waiting at home instead of a wife waiting at home, whatever. I mean, again, the gender really shouldn't matter unless, like, there's something in that particular that particular game, or you're playing a drow in the Forgotten Realms, there's a huge difference between playing a female drow and a male drow. There are matriarchal society. Um, Same thing with were hyenas. Like there are things that will get in the way if you make that shift, but for the most part, it's just going to be a hiccup, because the whenever I put together a character, I give you a graphic depiction of them. I try to give you a little bit of a background. I do my best normally to have some interaction between some of the other characters, and if I have created a potentially romantic connection between two characters, um, while I personally don't care whether or not suddenly it's a homosexual connection, it is possible that the other player might have an opinion one way or the other. And so I guess for me, one of the things that sparked this topic is the idea that a player would go to a game and go, a game that you have pre-made characters at, and go, I'm gonna change the character you made for me. Period. No discussion. I'm gonna change the character you made. That could be pretty severely problematic. What if, again, nothing's rising to my brain because gender's not that important in most games, but there might be an instance where, like, you've got a boat-based game, and there's these female sirens that are written into the story of the game, and suddenly the gunner, who I had as being female, as a way to thwart the sirens, a player sits down and goes, well, I want to be the gunner, but I don't want to be no girl. Oh, okay. Well, I'm changing to a guy. All right, well, I guess you're changing to a guy. And then, 3 chapters in, suddenly he's ensorcelled by the sirens, and my MacGuffin that I had planted on the boat to fix the situation is diving overboard and swimming towards them siren songs, and the game has now suddenly become a whole lot different. I guess it is the fact that as a player, that you are coming to the table to play someone else's creation, someone else's character, that maybe instead of planting your heels and going, well, I'm going to change this character if I don't like it, is take a look at the other characters that are there and find one that is more suitable for what you want to do. In my opinion, again, I'm not trying to scold anybody or point out, like, oh God, this is going to make a problem. Nothing is true. Like, and even if someone sat down at my game and was like, I don't want to play a dude, I want to play a girl, and those two guys took the girl characters for whatever reason, I'm changing this to a girl. For the most part, I can't possibly see where I would have any trouble with that. I would look at it like, oh, okay, cool. It might be a mental thing for me. I'm probably going to continue calling that person a he, because I built that character and that story as a male gendered character, but it doesn't mean that I won't eventually get along with it and figure it out. It's just, when you are planning to do something like that as a player, if you're coming to play, to sit down at that table and go, I'm doing this. I know that I'm going to do this. I know it's going to cause waves. I know it's going to be a problem, at least initially. Or I shouldn't say problem. There's going to be a hiccup. If you know you're going to cause that hiccup, take a second and decide whether or not it really matters that much to you. Because if it really does, if you're like, no, I just can't get in the brain of a dude, and I want to be a female at the table, and you haven't built enough female characters, or I only I only really know how to play thieves, or whatever I'm not going to say that you don't have like reasons. Everyone, they're all opinions and reasons. What I'm saying is recognize that you are asking the storyteller, you're asking the game master, you're asking your DM to deal with your hiccup, because it is your hiccup. And you are not telling your dungeon master that this is happening. You are saying, hey, is it cool if this happens? Because at the end of the day, the dungeon master is there to guide you through this story. He's there they're there to make it, make the most enjoyable situation for everybody at the table, and that includes themselves. They're not there to sacrifice their time and their effort and their uh, uh, creative juices, their flow, to simply be bullied by players. Which comes into what I would say is probably the single number one above the golden rule, and the reason why I'm wearing this shirt. Don't be that guy. If you're sitting down at a table now, if it is your regular table, I'm sure you figured out house rules. You've got your own thing. You've been playing long enough that you guys know what's what, and when this is going to happen or whatever. But the guy who the player who constantly quotes the rules without being asked, looks up stuff just to make sure that everybody's doing everything right the way that it needs to be, or my absolute least favorite, the person who wants to make sure that they correct the game master. That's that guy. That's the save versus fun until I get my way. I would call that a cardinal sin at the game table as a player. Is now, if the game master is like, ah, man, I forget how drowning works, and everybody runs their books, oh, it's just like this. If they don't want to wing it, if they want to have the actual rules, then that's fine. No, you're not being that guy. The game master, your table has come to a general consensus that, hey, we need to look this rule up. If you're the guy who is like, okay, I don't know how drowning works in this game. I forget how drowning works. Give me like 4 Constitution saving throws, and everyone that you fail is a level of fatigue or whatever. That is a pretty okay way of handling it on the fly. And then after the game session, we can take a look at how it actually works. It doesn't slow things down. It makes things progress, in a seemingly a way that makes sense. And there's no real reason to fight it, because that does still kind of make sense within the paradigm of the game. Now, if that guy goes, man, I don't remember how drowning works. Roll a d6. On a 5 or 6, you drown. Then maybe raise your hand and go, do you mind if we take a second to look up what the drowning is? Because I really would not like a 33% chance to lose my character right now. There are different ways of handling a situation, and a lot of it comes down to the request of that information. I'm going to use a term that has been thrown about quite a bit at game sessions in the past. It doesn't happen nearly as much as it used to, but when a player does this to another player. So player A is about ready to do something and goes to do said action, magic item, spell, whatever. Gets ready to do the thing, and then player 2 goes, wait a minute, it doesn't, I've got my book here and it says that it doesn't work that way. You can't do that, player A. You need to be able to, you can't do that. It says right here. And here's my PG-13. We call that cock blocking at the table. And it is not a sexual reference in any way, shape, or form, nor is it a gendered one. It is simply, you are being a cock by blocking your friend or your fellow player with this rules are happening. That if the game master's cool with what's happening, and it's not a player that is like cheating, it's not like someone's like, well, it says here that my fireball can be my fireballs can be this big, no matter what the actual book says. Again, all it really takes to be a good player at the table is to not be a jerk, Think about your fellow players and your dungeon master and your game master about how things are having, what kind of fun everybody's having. Are you going to walk away from this table happy? Are your fellow players going to walk away from this table happy, or are you going to complain about the time that guy's fireball was weird shaped because the game master let him do that? Again, it's all figurative. It's all going to come down to the instances, but I think it it really does matter. It's a huge matter when a player offers, or even worse, especially if you're in like a public place, like a convention or a game store, and you're not involved with the game, and you offer the unsolicited rules advice. Oh, you are one of the worst. No, if no, at my table, if no one's asking and someone just pipes up with rule stuff, for the most part, we'll shrug it off. If no one's asking and someone is using a rule, an obscure reading or something just to basically be like, haha, I'm right, we're going to give them the stink eye, and we're going to be watching them for, rules lawyering in the future. And then on top of that, if it is asked, if someone's like, hey, can you look up how this works? Or while we're dealing with this, can you find out what's up with this rules wise or whatever? If it's not slowing down the game, if the game, perhaps the game master, he might, they might remember it, but they might remember it wrong. And rather than taking 15 minutes to flip through all the source books and find that exact wording, if it works within the paradigm of the game and it feels right, then just go with it. We're not, he's not saying or that game master's not saying they're gonna like house rule that drowning is now always these 4 Constitution saves. It's just we're doing that right now because we want to move the story along and we want to get to other cool stuff. We don't want to spend half an hour digging through books trying to find some obscure rule. And so I think one of the big keys to trying to be a good player at the table is understand your table, the feel, the back and forth. And I know that can be hard at a convention game, or at a game that's like held amongst like an open call game at a game store or something like that. That can be a little more difficult to know those things, to know the feel of the game. And I think that the game master can help alleviate some of that weirdness by making sure that if they've got any house rules, that they are on like a handout for everyone to get, or like a placard that goes up in front of your game master screen that was like, hey, these 5 things are different when I run the game, so keep that in mind. Always be a little forgiving. Not everybody who screws up a rule or forgets that they can't do something in this edition. I can't tell you the number of times I've been wrong for years about something because a game edition had changed something that I never really realized that change had happened, but I've been playing for so long that I just kept on going with the same way. And then finally at some table or whatever, somebody's like, yeah, dude, it doesn't work that way. And at that exact moment, I might be like, oh God, man, you're totally blocking me on this one. But then later on, I'll probably look it up or have them point out to me where it says, oh God, I was wrong. This is completely messed up. The important part is to it's all about a matter of malice, or rather, hopefully, not having any. If you're trying to help with the rules, if you're trying to just honestly make it so the game runs smoother, then maybe your rules lawyering isn't so much rules lawyering as it is just, hey, I'm really good with numbers and letters, and the way that the wording is, this is what it is. Let's not dig down into what it could mean or what the intent was. We're gonna just look at what's actually written there. Or ask the game master and say, hey, what do you got there? Don't be the kind of player that is constantly being like, well, I know the rules say this, but reality or in real life, or I think it's stupid the rules do this, so we should handle it a different way. You're still playing a game. And unless your game master wants to house rule something and that covers for everybody, you got to play by the book. And sometimes these things, these rules were written for game balance and not for the narrative impact or for the what do you mean I can't, if I trained my dog, I can't have my dog do this. It says I can only, the book says I can only do these four things. It's mostly because they don't want your dog to be suddenly a sixth character. Like that's where this is coming from. And uh, uh, being the best player you can at the table means taking that stuff in stride. And I think that the two big, like I mentioned earlier, the cardinal rules, um, and one of those cardinal rules is discuss, don't argue, with your game master. If your game master says this is the way it's being handled, you can be like, hey, can we talk about this later? Or you can just like, deal with it and then bring it up at a later date. Be like, hey, now the game's over. I kind of want to talk to you about how you handled this. I don't think that was right. I'm not sure if the rules back me up on this, or if we need to look at changing the rules, or if we need to look at making sure that we're all doing this right, or whatever. Because that is something that could, dungeon masters make mistakes. We're all human. Or robots, or lizard people, or whatever. But I think my number one, above and beyond, above all other things, Cardinal Rule. And I know, I've said that there's all these rules and it's Cardinal Rules, but easily, hands down, number one rule to like wear it around your neck like a plaque, to be a good player. And this also goes to the game master too, but players tend to be the ones that fall into this category because the game master knows what's going on behind the scenes and players can get frustrated faster, is don't let your real world emotions seep into what your characters are doing. Don't get mad about something out here and then have your character enact that for no reason, or get mad at another player for something their characters. There needs to be a line. There needs to be a separation, a mystic wall between in character and out of character. And yeah, it goes with like meta knowledge and all that stuff, but I mean emotionally, you need to be able to take a step back and go, the stuff that's happening to my character is not happening to me. Or the frustration I'm feeling as a player about what this guy is doing has nothing to do with what my character is feeling at this moment. Uh, I've seen too many emotional outbursts at tables where players just get super frustrated and super mad about what's going on and need to take a timeout. If you need to take a timeout when you're playing a game, you need to maybe take some calming exercises before you get into said game. Because it is a game. We are all here. Everyone there at that table, hopefully, is there to further the entertainment of their life, to add joy to their life, to escape trouble and badness in their life. The last thing they want is more stress or one of their friends yelling at them, or an uncomfortable situation between a player and a game master that you have nothing to do with because they're yelling at each other about something that's happening in the game. But that yelling really isn't about the game. There's something else there. We all have stuff going on in our lives. We do. And we all have things that happen in game that frustrate us. And there is nothing to say that you can't just go, okay, I'm getting very frustrated at this moment. I'm just going to shut my mouth. Or we've tried this 12 times, 20 times. I don't know what else to do. And you then maybe look to your fellow players for advice. Or, you look at the game master, and again, this is a game, which means the game master, the person who's running this event or this session or this episode or whatever, they have the ultimate control over if the table's not having any fun. And if the players are all just miserable because your puzzle's too hard, or something got screwed up and the clue is gone, or torture doesn't work on some people, whatever the case may be, as a DM, as a game master, as the person who's really in charge of all of the Deus Ex Machina, all of that stuff, if your table isn't having fun, barring the most sadistic game masters that are like, yes, I love it when my players weep. If you're that kind of jerk, that's a different story altogether. And maybe I'll do an entire episode sometime about why these games are not DM versus player. But regardless, if your players aren't having a good time, you're probably not having a good time. Or very soon you won't be. And eventually, the last thing you want is for your players to have such a bad time that they don't want to come back. So if it gets to that situation where things are getting so frustrating and the players are just bummed out and everything's done, either help them out, give them a hint, figure out a way to kind of massage the story in the right direction, or if maybe it's just a matter of you guys have been playing too long that day in the session, everybody's tired and grubby because they've been 3 combats, and now we're all sitting around a campfire figuring out what the next plot point is, and none of us know what's going on. Maybe take a breather. Be like, hey, guys, let's take a half an hour off to just chill out, relax, watch some funny YouTube videos, watch some of our favorite Tales from a Professional Nerd videos, and that way you can back away and come back to it with fresh brains. And again, with the goal of everybody having fun, because more than anything else, that needs to be the goal of any of these games. And I don't care what, and that one I'm not going to, I know a lot of I do a lot of your mileage may vary, your opinion counts. I'm not going to do it on that one. I'm going to stick to my guns and say, when it comes to a role-playing game or a table that is a board game or a miniature game, that you'll see a trend there. That, yeah, some of these games winning is fun and losing is not. Some of these games having a bad session is harder to be entertained by it. Sometimes losing your character sucks, but at the end of the day, the goal of all of these things is to be entertained and to enjoy a sliver of life that you weren't going to enjoy as much before you sat down to play said game. And that, above everything else, is how to be a good player at whatever table you happen to be sitting at. Is add to the fun, do not detract from it, to the best of your ability. There you go. There's your golden rule. If I could put it down, is do everything in your power to add to the fun and not take away from it. Easy as pie. So until next week, which hopefully I'll have some cool stuff to share with you and show you. This weekend I'm going off to the Dusty dinner for the Dust 1943 guys. Or 1947, I think. They're hosting one of those cool events. I'm going on a car trip on my boat with my Dust friends. We're gonna push some minis around, roll some dice, and eat some food, have a good time. So I'm sure I'll have to talk a little bit about that next week. But as always, do me a favor, go out, have a good time, and above all else, play some games. See you next week.